Directeur. Malheur à la malheureuse Tamise qui coule si près du spectateur. Le directeur, conservateur du spectateur, empeste la brise. Les actionnaires, réactionnaires du spectateur, conservateur, bras dessus, bras dessous, font des tours à pas de loup. Dans un égout, une petite fille, en guenille, camarde, regarde le directeur du spectateur, conservateur, et crève d'amour. This goes in English from AI, called the editor. I should say too, excuse my French, but I just love the idea of someone writing in a language that's not their own. Bad cess to the brimming Thames that flows so close to the premises of the spectator. The predatory editor of the Tory Spectator poisons the air. Zoot-suited investors infesting the boardroom of the Tory Spectator pad about, hand in glove, chalking their cues. From her pitch under a bridge, a pointy-nosed scrap of a thing sees the predatory editor of the Tory Spectator and dies of love.
Thank you very much and welcome to this annual meeting of people and poems and optimism and love and utopianism and the peaceful transfer of power from pen to paper and to page to stage. And if this is your first time at this event, welcome. And if this is your 33rd time, welcome. Imagine your bookshelf. Imagine your brain. What a wonderful thing that would be. My name is Ian McMillan. I'm your genial host for the evening. Imagine me as a kind of lollipop man. That's what I am. I just let people cross the road from there to here and read their poems. Then I let them cross again. And I just do a bit of light relief in between the thinking, which is part of the fun. I must thank, of course, the T.S. Eliot Foundation for funding this for many years. Without them, and I'm not kidding, this event would happen in a bus shelter down the Mile End Road, and rather than winning a big prize, people might win a token for a box of matches or something like that. So thank you very much to them. Please inspect as deeply as you can the T.S. Eliot Prize website. It's the most wonderful thing. You can see such a lot there, a lot of videos of the poets talking. Our young critics' videos are astonishing. We don't only want to promote poets and readers, we want to promote people who go beyond that to writing criticism of the poems, to thinking deeply about the poems and the books, and it's all on the website. So please go and have a look at that. The books will be on sale at the end, and I think at the interval too, so please make yourselves aware of them. The poets will be signing at the end, so please form an orderly queue or a disorderly queue, because this is poetry and we definitely should be disorderly. On the train, on the way down, somebody said on the phone, they were ringing somebody up, and they went, look, I don't want to play fast and loose with joy. And I think actually we should. We should tonight. We should be playing fast and loose with joy. And that's what tonight's all about. But because of that, I must encourage you not to clap at the end of poems. That's always a difficult thing. We like to applaud at the end of poems, but it would just mean that the event would last until Thursday afternoon, so we can't clap at the end of poems. We can be about to clap. We can do that thing where the palms almost meet. We can do that. We can do some jazz hands. We can do some air clapping. We can be about to clap, but we can't clap because our microphones will pick it up and uniformed staff will remove you from the building, which you're allowed to clap as you are removed, but that's all right. So each point will read for 8 minutes, and think of those 8 minutes as like a ferry journey or a balloon ride. And so you get on the ferry and you are a bit apprehensive about what it's going to be like for the next 8 minutes on this ferry. And after a minute or so, you settle in. You think, this ferry's all right. I like this ferry. I like this ferry ride. After about 3 or 4 minutes of the ferry ride, you think this ferry ride is going to last forever. And I want it to last forever. I really do. That's the thing about these 8 minutes that the poets read for. And then suddenly you're docking and it's the end of the 8 minutes. That's what these readings are like. And yet, each reading will build. You'll remember each reading for a long time. So please enjoy the 8 minutes. Our first reader is Paul Farley. And imagine a perfect world. Paul Farley's book is called When It Rained for a Million Years. And I was thinking it would be a perfect world if it rained Paul Farley poems for a million years. As though we were living in an era called the Farleyocene. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? And recently I heard a wonderful documentary on Radio 4 about Paul has been suffering hearing loss, and he got some hearing aids, and the result was much better hearing, but also a kind of clarity in the language that he heard. And I thought, not only should we live through the Farleyocene, but somehow we should have things fitted to us when we listen to poems that help us to hear the world in a different way. And that's what Paul's poems do. They help me to hear the world in a different way. I also thought, and this doesn't work with every title, and T.S. Eliot used to do this, he used to take the first letter of the title of his book and it turned into a different book. So, for example, he wrote a book called He Wasteland, which is an interesting idea. And he had a book called Our Quartets. And I thought that if Paul's book would be called Hen, It Rained for a Million Years. And it's a kind of cosmic chicken licking, I think. That might not work, I don't think. But let's just hear Paul Farley reading from When It Rained for a Million Years. Paul Farley.
Oh, thank you so much. What a lovely, warm welcome, and thank you, Ian. What an introduction. Okay, 3 poems, 8 minutes. First poem, which concerns the beaver, and it's called A Rewilding. Masonic creature, maker, water-encircled survivor of hat crazes, crib fabricator, chiseler, tooth enamel's hardest expression on any branch of the mammal clade, stash house builder, stickler, worker in wands and twigs in waterproof slick fur, dammer of the catchment, under winter constellations that burn and flicker when dark and frost resume the northern hemisphere. Your ice crash, your infinity pool of the woods, your gnawing that forks panic through the sap, your assault on the vertical, busybody at rest locked in your lattice work, the birch tar scent of Shalimar locked in you. How could any forest forget such a creature? You need no introduction. This next poem is called The Super Flag, and you'll have seen those flags that cover crowds, that kind of shimmer across the tops of crowds in sports stadiums, at football games and stuff. You don't see them so much at poetry events, but wouldn't that be wonderful? And it's called The Super Flag. We watch it fill the giant screen and hear it behind us, tacking like sail, a rumour with a definite edge. We're watching and can feel its approach, floating with the acreage of empty commercial premises. We think of how it shivers like a bolt of silk on a bed of nails, or a waterfall in a pantomime. Then it pauses. It has a mind of its own, or has the mind of a swarm or show. We feel it's overcast, and the hairs on the backs of our necks are magnetized. Our arms rise, and we all become part of one giant bedsheet ghost. We scare ourselves when we look around. We see the big screen through its shroud. We see the flood lamps as 4 moons. We see its leaf veins running repairs. In this world with different gravity, there's a definite pull. Look at our hands waving like starfish on a tide. This held breath, like when the shot glass on a talking board begins to slide. And when we emerge on the other side and out from under it, we cheer, while the fans in the away end sing, "Where's your famous, where's your famous, where's your famous atmosphere?" It's wonderful to be a part of this. Thank you all for coming, and it's a great honor to be included on this list. And my final poem is called, it's kind of an ode to slush. Maybe you're owed an ode. Maybe you're feeling hard done by. Maybe snow and rain have bossed it and had things to themselves for so long your cold sulk can be explained. So, you're getting this. Hush now, little slush man. But as I give you human form, you're going the way of all slush. You won't take shape and hold. And here come the greys of blown bulbs, seascapes, the darkest daytime skies known to winter ponds, all concrete, certain clays, the grime of the age that hides in wheel arches revealed, our exhaust brought down to earth and ramified by tires, manifest in footfall, churned to a shallow quagmire. You're a landscape that needs to go straight into the wash, though can be pure and driven, packed in chest holes around stopped hearts, and can deliver brain freeze in the foyer of a different theatre. You've always been here, the bow wave of the glacier's creep that ploughs earth and grit, hooves jostling in a midden, hard goings and long droves, the ruts of armies advancing. Mostly you're elegiac because of your retreat under a clearing sky, the way you move on, and after a last few dirty looks have gone, quickly forgotten on the streets you occupied. We get a grip, sure-footed in an order out of chaos. Don't sulk. You didn't give me much to work with, but you're getting this. Thank you very much.
On the way, and you should have all been given little dabber pens, as they call them, and bingo cards, so that you can tick off Ian Macmillan introduction bingo phrases that I do tend to use a lot. I often use the word astonishing because a lot of these books are astonishing. I often use the word shape-shifting because a lot of these books are shape-shifting. So when you hear me using words like that, and words that I use quite a lot, just tick them off on your bingo card. And if you get them all, just shout house or bingo, as long as it's not during a sensitive poem. And then you do get to win a small cash prize. Did you notice how we've planned this so that actually Paul in one of his poems, said the words infinity pool, and the next book is Infinity Pool by Vona Grock. And you'll notice all the way through that each poet will read a poem that contains the title of the next poet's book. We've never done that before in 33 years, but if you keep your ears open, you'll see that that will happen and how it will work. And when I'm thinking, when I kind of immerse myself in all these books for ages and ages, what you start doing is you start imagining a kind of dystopia. You imagine a world without poetry at all, and what a kind of empty word that would be. You'd imagine that the world would kind of just chug along. It would be uncelebrated. It would be undescribed. It would be an unexamined world if there was no poetry. Now imagine a world with Vona Grock's poetry in it, and it's a world that brims with images and ideas and possibilities. Images like your own mouth, full of small round words like pebbles or glass beads smoothed by usage. What an astonishing phrase that is, a phrase that you can keep in your mind when you think about how talking and writing can be. Or a morning like 4 white window panes, its hours all the same as each other, all the same size as each other. And what Vona does is, we talked about the idea of listening with Paul's poems, and with Vona's we listen as well, but with Vona's poems we look really, really hard. Her work reminds me of those big outdoor washing machines that have started springing up next to garages, and it strikes me that her poems are like a big outdoor washing machine for language, with no spin cycle, and they never actually dry out, which is a good thing. And also, if you did take the first letter off the name of her book, it wouldn't work. If you called it Infinity, it just wouldn't work at all. Anyway, Vona Grock.
Hello. Are you enjoying yourselves? Are you glad to be here? Yeah, that all stops now. We're going to take a turn towards the Gothic. Picture a small fishing village on the west coast of Ireland, and picture a small holiday home there with 8 people in it, in August, in the rain. We know if we nag enough, we might be allowed to go into Salt Hill, which is the nearest seaside resort, little like Blackpool in its dreams. And there we might be allowed into the amusement arcade to spend the coins we've been saving up all winter. And this poem is about a particular game that you'll find in amusement arcades, which even as a child, I recognize as a perfect metaphor for the progress of a life. I might be retrofitting that, even as a child, perfect metaphor business. Anyway, more recently, they turned that game into an ITV game show hosted by Ben Shepherd. Tipping point. Put your coin in the slot with one clever hand. Use the other to angle the chute so the coin falls nicely behind a good clump of coins. And when the baton sweeps forward to nudge them all on, a few will cascade over the top ledge to fall nicely behind a good clump of coins. And when the baton sweeps forward to nudge them all on, a few will cascade over the front ledge to fall out of the game and back into the life you'll just have won. And if this were a game, the baton would not be a solid block of time. The coins would not be years, and when you were done, you'd not be running all through the arcade, calling out for your father, your mother, your dog, only to find yourselves in darkness, your hands twiddling emptiness, the coin cold on your tongue. I warned you. Okay, some of you might have been lucky enough to have had a swim in an infinity pool. Some of you might have seen it on the internet, seen an infinity pool on the internet, which is where I've seen them. And if you haven't ever seen one, the idea is that one side is dropped so that it has the appearance of being part of the landscape, so the water falls out of the pool and into the landscape. And in poem terms, that landscape, if you like, would be the world around the poem, which is the world that also contains the reader. Infinity pool. I had it in the night, the image, but lacked the energy or will to magic my body through my own fourth wall and lower myself, spit-spot, into the page. I just about recall, a blue rectangle not quite blank, held up against blue sky, blue sea, so you weren't supposed to tell the edge, the stitching, or the seams. And I am folding it now, this pool, corner to corner, line to line, so as to carry about with me its deep blue scrap of lie. But carrying folded water isn't feasible. You know that. It is just wonderful to be here and to have been chosen for the shortlist. It's so exciting and delightful. In the Irish language, the word poll, P-O-L-L, means hole. And so the title of this poem is on Poll Gorham, which means the blue hole. And that is the name of a man-made sea pool on the west coast of Ireland where I live. So 3 sides of it are made of rocks and the other is made of a lowered cement wall, which makes a perfect pool, which might be, I think, one of the nicest places in the world to have a swim. And it offers a kind of mannerly form of Atlantic swimming, because if you know the Atlantic, you know it's not a very mannerly ocean. But this sea pool is like a tiny corner of the Atlantic Ocean broken off. And if you can break off the corner of an ocean, you can do anything. On Poll Gorham, the blue hole. The Atlantic agrees the cement wall only if, twice a day by appointment, it gets to roughhouse and tousle it, pretending to hold it under, and then all kindness just at the last minute, letting it up to grab at air, then lull. Which is where I come in, over the rocks, bringing my one and only body to a pool barely brimming the visible wall that promises to play nice with me, all the sea's knots unknotted, all its quarrels quelled. First the squall of skin and sea, then gently, I quiet to its quiet, begin to feel as though my life thus far, every second of it, is what's under me, keeping me up, and my future, a life mask of sky fitted weightless to my face. I stay in until the water tires of me, climb out into a day along the spine of which I find myself licking salt from my forearm, so that my tongue is stars in darkness, my mind a fossil in gaunt sun, losing less than I thought, growing old. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vona. As I always say, the quality of listening in the room is wonderful. I mean, people assume this is a vast space, and it is, except when you're on the stage, it doesn't feel as huge, but actually just the intimacy that the poets and the audience can experience tonight is absolutely wonderful. As ever, I tried to explain to my grandchildren what I'm doing tonight, my younger grandchildren, Noah, Isla, and Louis, and they said, so you're going to this T.S. Eliot reading? And I talked to them about T.S. Eliot, and I showed them T.S. Eliot's famous signature, which is there. And I said, let's devise a game, because it's been very cold up in Barnsley. Let's devise a game where we'll go for a walk in the cold and try and breathe, and as we breathe, our breath will try and make T.S. Eliot's signature, and whoever gets the best one will get a prize. And so we did look quite odd, I must admit, walking through the park, breathing out, trying to make T.S. Eliot's signature. I didn't get very far. I got as far as a kind of shaky Ted Hughes number, but in the end, I think Louis was the winner. His T.S. Eliot just hung there in the air, and I felt the ghost of T.S. Eliot is actually agreeing with us from wherever he was, to be honest with you. Actually, he was just behind the slide, T.S. Eliot. Now, next poet, The New Carthaginians by Nick McCoha. And in this book, Nick McCoha shows the power of the slim volume, as it's called, to contain, but only just contain, the epic. Because here's a tale of a real event, a hijacked plane landing at Entebbe International Airport in 1976. And it's also about the way that reality is shaped by who we are, who we become, who we've been, and crucially, I guess, how we record it and who can record it and who can reinvent it and how we sample it and how we loop it. And this collection dazzled me, it did, with its ambition and the way that it didn't, unlike the hijacked airplane, it didn't take any prisoners. It made me think really hard all the way through. Occasionally, when you read a collection of poems, there's one poem that will let you just take a breather, just have a moment. There's none of that in here. You have to concentrate in a really good way all the way through. And I think if the government ever appointed a footnote czar, it would be Nick McCoha, because there are some wonderful footnotes all the way through the book that actually remind you what a powerful thing the footnote is and the way that it illuminates what the rest of the book is. But this is a fantastic book that tells you that the poet can be poets and the new historians, I think. A poet like Nick certainly is, linking past, present, and future for the next 8 minutes. Nick McCoha.
Good evening, everybody. I want to share with you 2 poems in that 8 minutes. In my book, there are 3 characters, or 3 protagonists. One of them is myself, character of the poet. One of them is the painter, Jean-Michel Basquiat, and the other is a black Icarus who lives in modern time. And the 2 poems I want to share with you, one is called Flight, and the other is Equals Pi, which is a painting by Jean-Michel Basquiat. So let us start with Flight. 1. Flight. There are things that can never be the same, like the history of space. 2 a.m. That's the actual moment when Basquiat and I first meet. In the light of that moment, he begins to talk about doing something other than art. Writing, perhaps. I take his coffee and cup it in one hand as he draws a pair of wings on the back of a napkin. Why wings, I ask? Because the body is an imperfect container. 2, flight. Time is what stops everything happening at once. I remember Icarus, Iverson's 48-point game, the taste of sorrel on a beach. But I've forgotten the fear of flying. I wake from a deep sleep, conscious that I am an animal, a bird on fire, looking for an edge. For the third time in my life, I'm scissoring through darkness. The night is thick with everything coming. Swift is the night. Slow is the dark. 3, flight, fleeing. Think of it like this. Amelia, the flight attendant, will want to know if everyone is okay. My face framed in the mirror of an Airbus bathroom lacks courage. A gun in a paper bag, and all things fear you and tremble in your presence. As my life has taught me, we must suffer. Without this world, I will take myself and unhinge myself from this body. Now keep in mind that this section is translated. 4, flight, between floors and levels. I didn't get to choose the location. 0.0436 degrees north, 32.4418 degrees east, in its darkness and hunger. Neither did I choose the ceiling of stars that made me a foreigner that evening. In the same way the air waits to take us up as we lean in upon it, waiting to lift us up as we glide into it, then I too am a new thing, born of another language. I am both familiar and unfamiliar. 5, flight, a selection of small portions. This photo is taken towards the end of the shoot. It is a love movement. If you add the sound under the words of the radio playing, you can hear my father ask the cameraman, "Will the light displace us?" Stevie Wonder is playing, and I'm off camera. And at 3 years old, I already know that they are going to split up. That Ugandan skyline looks completely different now. 6, flight, a far-fetched idea. Who understands the world? The year is 1976. It will be a long summer. Air France flight 139 would depart from Tel Aviv. So far, no sign of blood. The future, what does it know? We are in the last stages of waiting. A German will ask 40 Palestinians for the freedom of 40 Palestinians. They are moving to a changed destination, a foreign city that houses the room in which I was born. 7, flight, tale. Do you know this one? I call it Icarus's theme tune. He flies away like a dream and they cannot find him. Even like a vision of the night, he is chased away. Job, chapter 20, verse 8. Okay, so I want to take you to another part of the book. This is in the first section of the book. It's in 3 parts: the Deep Space Quartet, the Codex, and a final poem called Eroica. But we're going to go back into the Deep Space Quartet, and I'm going to share with you equals pi, which is these 3 characters kind of talking to one another. Here we go, equals pi. The 3 of us paddle in our kayaks to Pangum Island. Before the 3rd morning, the future separates into sea and sky. In the fractured extension of broken time, everything depends on how you interpret it, just as a prayer is more than the order of its words. Take that corner of the sky. Notice how the brightness of a gleaming sun retreats from the world. Our journey picks up in Stone Town, where all our food and drinks are catered. A lone fisherman beckons us to the far side of the beach. In the brief history of his silence, we set up camp for the night, as the fisherman tends to the fire under the boab trees. I fall asleep to the flame. What if the spaces we use as testimony are equal to pi? Here's a burning bush. Moses was a fugitive who saw the whole of Egypt's harvest destroyed. He stood against a troop of magicians and had to believe that the God that called to him from the flames of a burning thicket would terraform his reality. In the brief history of this other silence, he was talking to God in the same way I'm talking to you. What theater to catch God mid-sentence? I wonder if he stresses his T's. I wonder if when Kanye burns his childhood home to rubble on stage, if he's really joining a parallel to a burnt city that equals pi. What if the burning bush was God's cover blown? Or what if the flame was God's primer, and the flame's crackle was a soundscape he embodied while he awaited another voice, the kind of voice you might hear coming out of the drum kit of Max Roach while he's recording Money Jungle in the now, and by now I mean today, is equal to pi. The pistol of a dead man is equal to pi. The year 1976 is equal to pi. The burning floor of Entebbe Airport is equal to pi. The opening scene of Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing will, if you allow it, have you standing on the sofa's edge. The dance that your heart makes in the closing credits is equal to pi. So are the number of times you watch it again as if for the first time the world trying to reset itself is equal to pi. As is the burden that arouses men to labor. That too is equal to pi. Do you notice a pattern? Okay. Don't focus on the spine, but what it holds up. The future is an eroding witness, and she will tell you that war is not about protecting the border, but about how much blood is spilt within it. Tragedy belongs to such whispers. The bodies of your friends in the morgue is equal to pi, and whatever flame is burning, fame, in a world like this, is worthless. That too is equal to pi. My country is a woman in heat, a bridge of lusts, mercenaries crosser, applauded by the massing sands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. You know, thinking back to the 33 years of the awards, and you think maybe 33 years ago, poetry didn't have the central place in our culture that it has now, and I think part of the reason that it does is to do with these awards, you know, and the way that actually poetry is the leading form. I mean, I say that because I'm a poet, but also because I think it is. When I was a young man, it was very different. I would go to our local library, and there were 3 poetry books on the poetry section. There was a book by Patience Strong. She was a very good rhyming poet, I think. There was a book by the aforementioned Ted Hughes, The Hawk in the Rain by Ted Hughes, and there was a book by Mark Bolan of T-Rex. Quite a good. I wish to God I'd stolen that book from Darfield Library, because it now sells for quite a lot on eBay, but unlike Patience Strong. But now these days, of course, novelists had all the running for years and years. Novelists said they were the guardians of the culture. Novelists said they were the ones. But in fact, as we know, these days it's poets. And in fact, as you know, over the weekend, 1 or 2 novelists tried to defect to become poets, and that we just didn't want to let them in. And then 1 or 2 novelists have tried to say we want to take over the green field of poetry. We want to take over the green space of poetry. We want to invade poetry's green land, but we're not going to allow them to invade poetry's green land. Our next poet, that taking off 1 syllable doesn't quite work, because Natalie Shapiro's book will be called, 1 letter from the start of the book, it'd be called Tay Dead, which is not that interesting unless you're near the River Tay. I do enjoy this book so much, I made the mistake of reading it on public transport, a very full bus, and I kept nudging the person next to me, who I didn't know at all, as saying, you must read this, this is great, have a look at this, just have a look at this. They stayed for a while, and in the end, you know, I converted them, they bought the book. That's not true, they actually changed seats. But this is, well, there must have been a novelist. This is one of those books that's full of that kind of funny, profound, smart, glittering language that you wish, or I wish, you spoke in all the time. The wording, the lines shine with a kind of neon light. That's what it is. It's a kind of 21st century neon light. The light from perhaps something burning up as it enters the atmosphere. And that's what I feel when I read Natalie's work. And let's face it, the world is so very, very dark right now. And I think we need Natalie Shapiro's light. We really do. We need it. The way that she shines light on language, we need that so much, and we need it tonight. Natalie Shapiro.
Thank you so much for having me as part of this incredible event. This poem is called Spacewalk. Big deal, the solar system is replete with rubble left over from its formation. Join the club. All my circulating garbage and nowhere for it to go. I used to talk stuff out with the dead, but now I can't even do that anymore. They stopped understanding my references. They failed to intuit tone. We are witnessing an age of unprecedented divide between this life and after. They only want to be with their own. I drown myself, but unfortunately, I can't find the ocean. Though it seems like just a minute ago, it was right here with its bread knife fish and its putty knife fish and all its landed capsules down from space. Travelers, welcome home. I heard they give each astronaut a pill to end it all up there if needed, if the spacewalk turns out bleakest. Look around. You know what I want to know. Do they get to keep it? Larger papers. I've seen enough films where a character nicks himself shaving or maybe has a bread knife slip and the thin run of blood is supposed to stand for some violence, for something he did and is desperate to cover up, but the truth will out. I've seen enough that now when I graze my own hand on the jag in the railing and find I've been cut, I ask, what did that symbolize? As though I'm some puny reporter hollering out at a sought director who is ducking into a limo, over here, what did the blood symbolize? And I never get an answer. I have to read it in other papers, larger papers, and the studios are taking out full-page ads, so of course they get privileged access. I'm so resentful that I look away when I see them being read on benches and beaches, all those sections, business, style, metro, nation, real estate, world, my God, will it ever end? Fox. I tried the pills. They didn't help me sleep, but that was no big deal. I'll sleep when I'm dead. And they also didn't bring relief, but what can you do? I'll be relieved when I'm dead. I stayed in bed or sunned in the drive like some kind of studio head side piece. I got into watching these clips where women online showcased the clothes they wore or the food they ate on a given day. The best account was the one where the videos often concluded with, obviously. And I paired this with my round rattan crossbody bag, obviously. For dessert, I had 2 peaches, obviously. I decided, a fur coat. Everyone was surprised. It didn't seem like me, but I was trying whatever I could in case it kept me from dying. I was trying not to die. I'll die when I'm dead. The coat was from the 60s and unmaintained. It cost me $45 plus shipping and tax. I wore it a lot. The fur was falling off. I rented a car and drove in the coat and then received a bill for disobeying the rule against pets in the car. The bill was $200. The fur was everywhere. The coat was from the 60s and it cost me $45 plus $200 plus shipping and tax. And it might have kept me from dying, in which case it cost me $45 plus $200 plus shipping and tax plus rent plus food plus internet plus gas times 12, then times however many more years I would end up alive. The most expensive coat in history. Sometimes people ask me what it was. I didn't even begin to know how to know. Rabbits got killed for coats, also chinchillas. It could have been a fox. It could have been a mink coat, obviously. And this is the last poem. It's called Sorry to Eat. Sorry to eat and run, but I'm just in this enormous rush to die so I can haunt you. I really have to get moving. I'm actually quite behind. My error was assuming I was already dead and so could begin straight away. I take full blame. I thought I remembered being drawn up and out of myself and into the cosmos. But in fact, I was thinking of that time my boss dropped her keys down a grate and we had to call the city to retrieve them with a magnet. It turns out about half the incidents I once believed to be my own memories are really just things that happened to those keys. I recall so much unlocking, and so few human scenes, such as scrubbing a cake pan or tendering a letter or sitting in mourning for the melting of the ice caps while also respecting their apparent decision to concretize their interior pain through visible self-destruction. Don't think I don't know what you're doing, choosing this place, the most crowded planet, to give me the brush off, assuming I won't make a scene. Don't think I won't scream. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Isn't it good, the kind of juxtaposition of all the poets we're hearing tonight and that odd mixture of, we're celebrating full collections, but tonight is like reading a wonderful anthology or reading a magazine that's full of all kinds of different styles, different words of delivery. What a wonderful evening this is. It's weird when you're walking off a lot like I am and you walk straight into what appears to be T.S. Eliot's eye, this huge eye. I've noticed a number of the poets as they walk off seem transfixed by it and wanted to have veered this way as though they might fall into T.S. Eliot's eye. We'll let you know if that happens in the second half. In the opening poem of Isabel Baffy's dazzling collection, Chaotic Good, she writes, "There are more species of apple than human taste buds to enjoy them," which I saw when I first read it as a kind of invitation to enjoy them and to find more apples than you knew about. But then I thought it also means there are more species of poetry than we know about that we should try and explore, and there are more species of Isabel's poems in this new book than there are minds and eyes and ears to explore them, if enjoy is the right word, and maybe it is. We enjoy these poems, we experience the poems, we encounter, we are moved by them, we're excited by them. And I'm very excited by the number of forms in the book. There's a kind of aphoristic magic within the poems. There are haiku in the poems. There are ghazals here. There's pantoums. And there are also a kind of forms that Isabel has invented herself, that are so much of herself. And I was trying to think how I encountered her as I was reading the book. And it's as though both the poet and the reader are on a tightrope. And as the reader reads the poem that the poet has written, we move towards each other across this tightrope. And it feels like as we approach each other, we might fall off. But somehow, miraculously, we don't. And we pass, I don't know, it sounds ridiculous, pass through each other, but then somehow the reader emerges at the other side as a different person, having read these amazing poems. Isabel Baffy.
Thank you so much, Ian, and thank you to the T.S. Eliot Prize. This is your mother's daughter, a GIF. You will be nothing, like your mother who hoarded, scabs on her knees praying daily. For a boy, she gave everything, once was found hanging, wind chimes drowning out. Your cry desperate, you have a habit of breaking. Your mother's heart echoing fault lines, an invaded coast you lost, the more desirable you became. Out of reach, leaves fall. In the wrong order, as you were taught, you bow, then you break. your silence destroying your mirror, your mother teaching daughter how to feel for lumps, how to hold her own stomach in, to stomach what she holds in. She umbilicals to you all, lifelong the sentence, fraying when you trust yourself most. Unlearn what you were taught, a fable gleaned from crumpled receipts. Tell your daughter you are inevitable, an inescapable story, but you will be nothing like your mother, who hoarded scabs on her knees, praying daily for a boy. She gave everything once, was found hanging wind chimes, drowning out your cry. Desperate. You have a habit of breaking your mother's heart, echoing fault lines, an invaded coast. You lost the more desirable you, became out of reach. Leaves fall in the wrong order. As you were taught, you bow, then you break your silence, destroying your mirror, your mother, teaching your daughter how to feel, for lumps how to hold her own, stomach in to stomach. What she holds in, she umbilicals to you, all lifelong the sentence, fraying. When you trust yourself most, unlearn what you were taught, a fable gleaned from crumpled receipts. Tell your daughter, you are inevitable, an inescapable story. But this next poem is a golden shovel, which means the end words are borrowed from another poem, a line from another poem, or in this case, a song. The song is Midnight Train to Georgia by Gladys Knight and the Pips, and the line is, I'd rather live in his world than live without him in mine. This is Reader, I Married Him. If you asked me why I made myself so small, I'd show you the river, the one that would rather gorge itself on sewage than be clean. I'd give you a toe to live upon, a rotten tree to kneel before, a dustpan to curl up in, a name pride from a ghost. My laughter was thin, but his gave all the birds a breath to glide on, remedy for a wretched world. I was never that attached to me anyway, never more than a ribbon stretch away from curling against a blade. I once put a live wire on my tongue to taste the void. It was not without its sweetness. That sleep, like choking on feathers like him, the place where women went to die, the way he fucked me in front of the mirror so I'd know that the face beneath him was mine. If we all think back to the pandemic, you'll remember that there was a period where we were all, during lockdown, we were only allowed to go outside for about an hour, and outside became this almost unattainable goal, this mythical place, almost. And basically outside just took on a new meaning for many of us. And there was a day I was running in the park, and I ran past this woman who was sobbing into her phone, and I overheard her say, "That's what he's like with you, but you have no idea what he's really like." And I realized that for some people at that time, outside was not just a respite from boredom and monotony, but it was an escape. This is to the woman sobbing into her phone on a park bench. I write the poem to forget you, to study you, to keep you safe, whichever you can forgive. With a meter that mocks your palpitations, a slant rhyme placing tomb on top of you. Because like you, I have never been as perfect as a firstborn son in his mother's eyes. I too know what it's like to mop a man's mouth with your sleeve. I know the scabs you worry. You lie so well it becomes real, and scorn the women who pray for a man like yours. Broad-smiled and many-faced, fork-tongued with tangled eyebrows, steady hands. What even teeth he has, and how exacting their bite. He had a wisdom deep enough to stand in, and you did, leaning on his shoulder as you stepped into your tomb. Mangled, as only a man could make you. No one knows it like me. How you curl into him like a child and watch the world fall in love with his light. How some nights you still wait for it to find you. When he beckons, you approach on all fours. When he shines on you, you scatter. And my last poem was inspired by a dream. I like to write from my dreams. And basically in this dream, I was standing with my now ex, and we were with someone else, and they asked me what his name was, and for the life of me, I couldn't remember. So here's the things that are better off forgotten. This is Janus. The two of us kept swapping faces. By that point, it was the only thing keeping us together. Buttercups turned when I passed as though I were you, and not just the face I wore, but also the name it answered to. Why would you give me your name? I can incriminate you with so much less. I have a scab shaped like your foot, the curves of my ear molded to your voice. And I made you too, being for being. Your dreams are the sequels of mine, and the brown of your eyes is the earth I gave you. One morning after a swap, someone asked me your name and I couldn't remember it. But they were staring, and you were staring and smiling at me so sweetly. I started coughing to fill the silence, but I coughed so much that everyone thought I was dying. And now I'm tubed up in a forgotten room with a number for a name, and our faces are stuck and no one will touch me. I find a stranger's mirror in your pocket, but I can't bring yourself to look at it. I'm scared of what you might see. I'm scared that if I were lost in a crowd, it would still be your face I was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Isabel and to all our 5 readers. There'll be a short interval now, then we come back and hear 5 more wonderful poets. Can we have a round of applause for our fantastic sign language interpreters? Thank you very much. As you'll know, poets tend to redraft their work a lot, and sometimes you can't see the redrafting in the finished poem. And so I thought I'd try and represent the idea of what redrafting is by changing my shirt in the interval, so that I've actually redrafted myself in the process. And so in the first half I was wearing a sober blue shirt, and now I've always been dipped in a vat of Marks and Spencer, so it's always the same kind of thing. But I thought I'd change my shirt to show the action of redrafting. We've got 5 more fantastic poets for you, starting with Sarah Howe's 4 Tokens. And of course, this is another example of a book that would work with the title with 1 letter taken away. So the ore token could be like a token of gold, a token of ore. I think this could form a new school of poetry, a new way of thinking. A 4 token is a sign of something to come, a foreshadowing, and that word foreshadowing is interesting when you think very hard about it. There are shadows in this book, shadows of the past, of impending motherhood, a memory of, as Sarah writes beautifully, time dilating like a perfect afternoon. And there's such a lot of that in here, such a lot of the way that time moves around, the way that, as we found in quite a few of the books today, you shouldn't be able to contain so much time in these small, slim volumes, but you can. And this poem contains so much time deep past, recent past, the time of pregnancy. It's an amazing book in that sense, and there are lots of shadows in it. But we've talked about light earlier, and it seems to me I don't know much about physics, but I know that to have shadow, you have to have light. And there's so much light in these poems, and if it's not an impossibility, it seems to me that the light in these poems is a light that does a lot of heavy lifting. I'm sure it does. Please welcome Sarah Howe.
Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you, all of you, for not sneaking home in the interval, which I almost did. 4 Tokens, it picks up various threads from my first book, Loop of Jade, and then watches them unravel. This first poem is about the Cantonese I lost, or never really had. Under Song 3. No, I do not speak my mother's language. Other tongue, nether tongue, long gone birthright tongue, mutter tongue, untuned, unstrung. 2 sang in my child's ear, one sense, the other a koan of tones, and underlonging, unbelonging. I do not my unknown language, harder one with age. Sing wrong, burden tongue, oh mend my dead end tongue. I do not own my mother's tongue. I ring alone my father's language, loaned tongue, a loaned song, gauge, my ears gauge, hamstrung, my further tongue, falter tongue, I hone a never gone, a not undone. This next poem is for my adoptive grandmother, the stranger who took in my mum as an abandoned baby in Guangdong in 1948. She herself knew what it was to be abandoned, because as my mum put it, she was one of those girls who were sold by their families, probably at a time of scarcity. For Mother. What I know begins outside, within the limits of Shanghai. A girl is born, youngest of many. One day, if it helps, say the bowls are empty. The girl is sold to strangers. If it helps, say it sounds like a fairy tale. Did you see the look in her mother's eyes? This is what happened, happens, then, now, where money buys desire, silence. If it helps, say her mother was dead. What she went on to live, what she became, you can imagine. Imagine, can you, what she went on to live, what she became, if it helps, say. Her mother was dead desire, silence. Where money buys then, now, this is. What happened, happens. Did you see? The look in her mother's eyes, if it helps, it sounds like a fairy tale. Sold to strangers. The girl is, if it helps. Say the bowls are empty. One day, a girl is born, youngest of many. The limits of Shanghai, outside, within. What I know begins. After I had children myself, I found myself returning to my adoptive grandmother, even though I can't quite summon a conscious memory of her. and the enigma she represents. I found a picture of her with my mum as a child, and I had this sudden flash of intuition looking at it, that they looked too much alike not to be related by blood. This is a long poem in 23 parts, so I'll just read a few snippets from it. It has an epigraph from Borges's famous story, The Garden of Forking Paths, which also gives the poem its title. I imagined a labyrinth of labyrinths, a maze of mazes, a twisting, turning, ever-widening labyrinth that contained both past and future and somehow implied the stars. An error, a ghost. 1. I turned the page and knew I'd seen the photograph before. I was looking for my dad after he died. But this album was older, hers. I'd seen the same picture. Still, I'd not seen it. Was startled to my core. 3. I've been putting this off. Don't want to turn to it again. In grainy black and white, a portrait of my mum. Her face rhymes with mine at 5, my daughter's now. Sat next to the woman she was taught to call mother. They've put on their best. Girl in a pale striped dress, Peter Pan collar, pigtails tied with ribbons that look white but can't be. The woman, she's in a patterned cheongsam out of Wong Kar-wai, lipstick, wavy hair restrained into a do. Both smile. The child's gaze blurs subtly, caught by something out of frame. Hers looks straight into the lens. What shocked me? Their noses. Surely they were the same, or nearly. But more than that, the contours of her face. 6. That nose. I'd struggled to draw it in art class, scanning the propped mirror's smeary glass to produce the lifeless self-portrait my teacher called, a bit racist this, or just perceptive, a mask. I felt myself being driven in the dark along another history's forking path, a shift in the terms of the universe, undoing, if true, everything I knew about our dim scene of origin. Gravity and quantum overlaid, 2 divergent worlds. 15. The end is sown before the beginning, between 2 mirrors, mise en abîme. The egg that grew into my daughter formed within me, her mother, while my body formed within the body of her grandmother, and so on back. Down time's corridor, its unopened door, the ghost won't answer. How much must you hate yourself to tell your child she's not your own? Of the photograph, I took a furtive snap. I open up the app, look at it again. Her face, a garden I can take in only in parts. No long view, boundaries occluded, bends where the way disappears. This time, I'm not sure. A phantom resemblance, a magic eye picture. Now you see it, now you don't. A shadow, a wrong, laddering down into my blood, or not. If every family is a kind of story, however broken, a stone passed through many lives. What would it mean to find the truth? Pity those who make their mothers into myths. For them is reserved a special hell. More pitiable still, and overlapping, are the others, the ones who must make their myths into mothers. Thank you.
I think we all agree maybe as well that the other great thing about poetry is that it reverberates. It lines and phrases and all stanzas that we hear tonight will reverberate with us for a long time in the future. And it actually happens in an odd way in this room. I've been told that members of the Festival Hall staff have heard actually ghostly voices from about 20 years ago, or even 15 years ago, reciting some of the poems like ghosts. I made that up, but it wouldn't be interesting if it had happened like that. I think it would. I also think that maybe the T.S. Eliot Prize should think of other prizes to go alongside the money. It would be nice if the winner got their name, got their face on a £2 coin, just one, that would make it very valuable, or somehow gave the title of their book to a new estate being built somewhere in the Midlands, so it would always be remembered like that, because what this prize does is it puts poetry in front of people, and wouldn't it be interesting if it was in front of people in another way, perhaps some kind of T.S. Eliot chocolate bar, T.S. Eliot Prize-winning chocolate bar, or even a maze in a thing, in my end is my beginning, it could be called. You'd always get lost in the maze somewhere. That joke was funnier when I thought of it on the train than it is now, which is the great thing about redrafting. You can redraft poems and jokes as often as you want. Our next poet, Catherine Esther Cowie, written this wonderful book, Heirloom, and it reminded me when I read it and reread it and reread it, because that's the joy of doing this job. You want to read and reread and reread, that we are all accumulations of everyone who's gone before us, and we are all libraries of untold stories, and we have to borrow these stories from that library, and we have to start to tell them again and again. And the first word in the book is then, which really powerfully suggests a continuum, 4 generations of women, and suggests a deeper past and a possible future, and that everyone is a palimpsest, is a stained glass window, that somehow histories and poetry's light can shine through. So please welcome Catherine Esther Cowie.
Good evening in London. It's such a pleasure to be here again. And I'm going to read from Heirloom, and Heirloom is divided into 4 sections. Each section represents a generation of women. And the first woman I'm going to read from is Leda, and she's the great-grandmother in the collection. And the first poem is called, Blessed Be My Unwed Head. To what angel did I concede? Let it be as you decree, body for the will of a man. That I was 16, that he married to my sister did not matter, body for an apathetic God. No spirit overshadowed, ruptured his seed, or the throbbing vein in his sun-spotted neck. I am consoled. At least I wasn't dragged into the bush by some nobody. Oh, hail the extramarital bed of the kitchen floor, and nature, indifferent to circumstance, to my will, does not break her order, her law. Mercy, 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 there must be miracle. No wise men visit, only the matriarchs, rotten-toothed and stinging, their gifts, the back of a hand, fists, and a crown called skettel. What figure do I cast in this family portrait? A darkening frame for this haloed child? She has put on his power, her pale skin blessing her bastardness clean. To tend, to suckle and bath, another body siphoning my life. How the noise in my head grows and grows, splinters into phantoms and shapes, graceless muses for her cotmobile. How I terror. And the next poem I'm going to read in this section is called Memoriam, after Carlos Drummond's Residue. Only a little of me remains, a fixture, madwoman locked in a downstairs room, forward gag, muffler. Of my ravings, the upstairs hear nothing, nothing. But still a little of me will stay, the stink of me in the sheets, on the walls, on their tongues, wagging, wagging all night long about my bad romances, stupid woman, sad woman, object lesson. Of my illness, they talk too much. I am spectacle, spectre, fire lover, wandering off into the bush, the market square. My early morning peep shows, the breaking day, someone forgot to lock my room again. The music loud in my head, how I shook, the neighborhood awake with my naked breasts. My grandchildren cried, their friends can't come over. And of those things, I remember so little, so little. Why can't they do the same? Of the things I enjoy, they won't remember. The morning doves nesting in the monstrous breadfruit tree, rum thrown back, going deep down between my legs. My hair brushed and slick and smoothed into a bun, my yellow satin ribbon. Of God am I against, for, or indifferent? They've never asked or cared to know. My mother, father, their names, already they've forgotten. Of my love of white, they'll remember cotton dresses bleached in a blinding sun, my men always, always fair. Of me so little will remain, stripped and pared down to a fear, bright and blossoming in the back of a young girl's head. Ufu, 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 ufu. And ufu means you are crazy in St. Lucian Creole. And the next section is Marie, and she's the daughter of Leda, and she's the grandmother in this collection. And the title of the poem is called The Outside Child. I will not disappear, dead myself in a bush somewhere. The freak lives, sucks air. I have a face that is not so unlike hers. Perhaps that's what troubles. I am the final blow, the betrayal so close, under her roof, in her bed. The man she so loved, loved me, raised me in her house, unnatural thing that I am, a sin, offspring of a predator and a prey, that grows and grows, has a mammalian face, hands, feet, a voice like the blackbirds, high-pitched and singing. In my wildest dreams, I hug her children, my cousins. They are my brothers and sisters. How they insult, mother killer, daughter of a sketel. I blossom bright, draw nearer still, allow their biting bites, the sharp of their teeth, the only intimacy, my flesh, an epiphany. I am, love me. And the next poem I'm going to read is called On Repetition, and it's from the third section in the book, The Daughters, and they are the daughters of Marie. On repetition. Give me Sunday afternoons, my front porch, my child right here by my side, banging some toy into its broken parts. Hear my tongue, winged and repeating the same blues, a woman shuddered and struck. I ruffle my daughter's hair, sing, I touch the woman, bruised cheek, touch my face, stinging. My mother said she never touched my face. In that song, the man hit the woman. In that song, my mother said she never. And the final poem from the last section, titled Catherine, is called Aftermath, to Great Grandpa. Oh, hands that wound, even you grew flowers, the red petaled hibiscus, the soft trumpeting yellow bells. Even you grew banana trees and the dashing root, and we too are your blossoms. I am here, I am here. Muela, muela, the animal of my body chants my praise. I strip to my underwear, press against the cool tiles, let the sun trample my skin, let the light take root inside. Tonight, I'll listen to the unlit sky teeming with rain. Tomorrow, the hills will sparkle emerald, and one day I will tell another, these hills live in me, Montfortune and Bellevue. And you too fretted this place for your bones, abandoned the great house for a hut on the beach, its siren songs. We thought grandma would tongue your name a curse. She called you daddy, spoke of the coconut heads you split, gave her the water to drink. Who wants to begin in violence? We pressed our fingers to our wound, felt its widening mouth chorus. We are ashamed. Oh, hands that wound, no one sung this song to you. No one rimmed your neck with shame. But sow into a girl child what is hidden and hurts. Oh, dead man with your ass stuffed with dirt, I string you into verse, a vengeance, an attempt at teasing out the light, to bear witness. I call you monster, I call you father, how this song blues the kitchen floor, bloodies our feet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I was thinking actually about that thing I said earlier about you could have different kinds of prizes and maybe have a prize as part of the T.S. Eliot Prize that a street would be named after you. And I suddenly remembered when I sat down this thing that happened years ago when I was doing some work with some school children in Doncaster and there was a new estate being built. And we suggested to the builders that we could get the kids to write a poem and somehow each line of the poem would be the name of a street, and you would walk around the estate and there'd be a big board at the top of the estate and you would follow it around the estate and it would tell the poem as you walked around. And we did this project with these kids and we made this thing and it was beautiful and we presented it to the builders. I remember they all sat there in their hard hats and the kids performed this poem with joy, and at the end there was a kind of silence. And then one man took his hard hat off, and because he was the boss, all the others took the hard hat off as well. And he said, well, that was a flop, wasn't it? And I said, oh. And I said, why? And he said, well, it's just a lot of lines. And I said, oh, well, perhaps you should come to a T.S. Eliot event. And I thought, I was always disappointed by that, but I thought what I should do is introduce that man in his hard hat or without it to the wonderful Gillian Allnut, because I've always loved Gillian Allnut's poetry, and her poems, and this seems silly but it's true, are made up of lines. She's a big fan of the single line, not just the single line as scaffolding or the single line as a piece of, building material around the stanza or as a roadmap through the poem, but actually line as line, which actually is the only things that poets have got. When those novelists come showing off, that's all we've got is the line, the beautiful line. And I think, all right, imagine, thinking back to these builders, imagine the page as a wall, then the line is a line of mortar through the wall that instead of being a crack that divides, then this line heals. It really does. So here's the line celebrated, the line as itself. And two other things. One thing is that the poems are written often from a centre, a place called Eschwinning, and it strikes me that these are places that are the centre of where the world happens. And also, this is, I think, the only T.S. Eliot prize-winning shortlist poem, at least book this year, that's got the word gormlessness in it. And I personally think there should be more books with the word gormlessness in it. I don't think T.S. Eliot ever used it, but he should have done. And this is just a great book that is actually full of gorm, I can tell you. Gillian Allnut.
Thank you, Ian. I think you must have been hearing some of those ghost voices. My father was an architect, and he came up with the word gormlessness. Gillian, don't be so gormless. That's what I got. I'm glad that Eliot stuck to the shorter word, gorm. This is Load is in 3 parts. It basically covers this world since 1949, which was when I was born. But since the post-war period, the first section is called post-war. The second is, oh God, what is the second? Lockdown. I don't like remembering lockdown. The third section is Earth Horde. It looks at the present and the future and charts the terrible state, as I experience it, of change going on a huge scale. My mother had a brother called John, who would have been my only uncle, except I only knew him as a portrait, as a photograph in a silver frame on the sideboard in my grandparents' house in southeast London. He was the navigator in the Lancaster bomber crew, and in April 1943, they were bombed, shot down over German-occupied France. And so this was how he existed in himself, for my mother and her parents, for myself, for my father too. He was a good friend. Poem for John Clinging. Of you, John, there was nothing to go on, nothing but your smithereen of skin and bone and plain. You were one of the quick and the dead, and far too many of them to crowd into the dining room. You came alone, the chosen one, miscarried, made, laid out among them. Gran, my mother, and in the blustering silence, Brodie Anderson. And then you were no more alone, old navigator, party to their incompletion. So it was that when at last my mother helped me lay her down, I took you into my own heart's pondering, and still she claimed, and wouldn't dream of claiming you, her one and only. You'd have liked him, she said to me, often. I think I would have done. The one poem from the lockdown section. I was 71, as it happened, in March 2020, when the first lockdown was imposed upon us. And I was furious at having to stay in my house and not run around helping people. You probably remember that Boris Johnson's sister said when they were asked as children what they wanted to be when they grew up, Boris replied, "The king of the world." At 71, I had never been offered the taste of my own mortality. I was as yet in Blighty. I asked them in imagination then, by whom I mean the king of the world and the queen, would they allow me to go on into the latitudes of alone, into the anon, and I, my heart, yet part of the penultimate. A small poem written during a 20-minute meditation session with other people in the group that I was in at the time, in a house somewhere in the wilds of Northumberland, a quiet place, and we sat in, it was summer, we sat in the living room, which gave on to the greenhouse, which gave on to the outside world, which had in it rain and the wood pigeons. Summertime, Oh yes, the poem is for a friend of mine who we met as students. He was the first person in my life, made me think I wasn't alone. And then 10 years later, took his own life. And so in a sense, I have been alone in relation to him all these years. Summertime, mute or musical as morning rain, and you, as always, gone. How I listen to your absence, to my own, to the now and then of wood pigeon, its dear, inconsequential circumlocution. This and the rest of the poems are from the final section. I have been drawn into climate change campaigning, and this is a poem about the heat wave that we had in July 2022, which may or may not have been a response to climate change. But I went out against the morning's advice of Radio 4 that you not go out between 11 and 3 on this particular day. And I forgot and walked the half mile through my village to the co-op to get some food. And it was so hot, I was somehow physically shocked. And so I decided to walk back through the woods that line the old railway line, the old pit line. I live in about 5 miles outside Durham in an old pit village. And as soon as I entered that wood, the trees gave moisture, gave shadow, gave coolness, and I was physically grateful to them. I've never felt that before. And as soon as I got home, before unloading the shopping, I wrote this poem. This was the 19th of July, 2022, when we hit 40 degrees further south. This was in the northeast, of the trees in the wood by the old pit line. Surely they will not fall short of great-heartedness, giving the shawl and the shroud of their shade for us. They will cover us, sharing not sentiment, but soil and soul with us. They will cover for us, bearing the brunt of light. They will shoulder the weight, the responsibility of it. A poem whose title is a quote from the Russian poet Osip Mandelstam, and I've not been able to source it. I think I read it in a biographical book about him, in a letter that he'd written to a friend. And you'll probably remember that he died, it is thought, on the way to a labor camp in eastern Siberia in, I think, 1938. And I think what I love in Mandelstam, though he is difficult, is his honesty and a kind of vulnerability. He said, "I love this poor earth, for I have known no other." So Mandelstam, with nothing but his own I am, would give it again and again to each of us, anonymous, alone, in its brown paper bag, no longer stone, but bread bun. And a haiku to finish with, in the book, after even the footnotes at the back, there's a sort of, I hope, an open finality, unfinality about it. It's something like a vision of the world after many roaring fires, a lot of rain, and perhaps after our own time. Roughage, gusts in grasses, muster of grass and ghost and graces, world without edge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gillian. I did forget to say that Gillian Allnutt's book, Load, does actually follow the Macmillan theory of taking the first letter off, then it becomes Ode. So I think we are building up some kind of PhD thesis here. If you want to listen to these poems again, or at least some of them, they'll be broadcast on my Radio 4 show, The Verb, a week today. We're on at 5:10 on a Sunday, and of course at any time on BBC Sounds. And do have a go at listening to it if you don't already. 5:10 is a good time to listen to it whilst mixing your Yorkshire puddings for your tea. And we do find that the different deliveries of the poems will speed up or slow down the mixing of the puddings, but also give you a kind of added, I don't know what you call it, mystical nature to the mixing of the Yorkshire puddings. And years ago, many years ago, on The Verb, the wonderful poet Tom Paulin used to do a close reading series for us, looking forensically at poems and illuminating them. And he taught me so much through that. He taught me to trust the words, just to trust the words, and that if you read the words closely enough, the words will reward you and the words will trust you. And now we've got a new book from Tom. It's a glorious breaking of silence after a number of years, and here's Tom's words again, and we trust them. And in a poem called The Spare Room, he writes, "So when I write before dawn," and I think about that. I think about the idea of somehow Tom's writing bringing the dawn. Somehow Tom's writing bringing, we've talked a lot about light tonight, but somehow Tom Paulin's writing bringing life, and light, I meant. And I often try and, when I'm reading these books, look for physical things about the book that will somehow, in an odd way, illuminate my reading of them. And I had all the Shortlist on a stack, and I put this one on the top. And because, as you can see, it's a little bent, I put a pen on, and this sounds facetious, but it's not. The pen rolled off the book, and it felt like, because I was feeling in that kind of receptive way, that somehow the pen itself wanted to write, having read this book, and that's how this book makes me feel. It makes me feel that I want to write more, that I want to think more, that I want to concentrate more on the words. And this, I can't pronounce it as well as Tom would. Naman Lach is the book, and some poems from it are going to be read by the wonderful poet Stephen Ray. So please welcome Stephen.
Thank you. I must say I'm very honoured to be included in this wonderful occasion to stand in for my dear friend Tom Paulin. Tom has given me some notes, and I'll try and remember them. Okay, first poem is because Namanla. Somewhere in the pine trees beyond the loch, two stones are being knocked together. Once, twice, 3 times, very dry. Maybe it's a chain gang working in the quarry. There is no quarry, though, and there never was a chain gang. Only the little chunks of red granite on the long looping bog road tell of famine relief. Congested districts, that human weather that sticks like salt stains or burrs in your hair. No, I realize all these are not, in fact, the case. It's a stone chat I can hear. It's clattery cry that's like the real hard stuff, poaching distilled on stony hills, where the black creature, the chuch, should be sounding its red beak, its curved bill, against the screes, not hiding out on the soft bog by the loch. And this poem is called Quand vous serez bien vieille, after Pierre de Ronsard. When you're well old and dozing by the fire, spinning wool or cotton under the light of 2 fat tallow candles, you'll say in wonder as you chant my lines, Ronsard admired me when I once was fair. Then one of your sleepy servants, hearing you speak my name most softly, will wake up from her dreams and bless your name that my desire has made to last so long. I'll be below the earth then, a boneless shadow taking my late rest under the myrtle boughs, and you'll be an old woman on the edge of death, regretting all my love for you and your so high and proud disdain. Heed my cadences then and live only for now. Don't ever bother about tomorrow. Just pluck today life's full-blooded roses. And this is called Nothing to Be Said. There was a smoke-dark desk in the study. It was oak, I guess, bog oak, and badly stained with wine and tobacco. It stood in front of a small window somewhere in Donegal, actually a back road near Pettigo, where the border runs through the main street. But where it is now is anyone's guess. In the New Ireland, there are no customs posts, no sangars, soldiers, police, or barbed wire. Looking out, I felt much less of a person than I did before, but knowing this new island was better, far better, than all that went before it. There was simply nothing to be said about the view of the mountains and wild rhododendrons strayed from some estate, or the sight of Ben Bulben, massive and tabled across Sligo Bay, which made me think of epitaphs that could neither get written nor chiseled in hard stone. I cast my eye back at the untidy room. I'd borrowed the place for a week on my own, hoping to read and maybe write. It was 2 long, dark years since I'd written anything of my own, and the books I'd lugged with me I'd read at least once before. What's this like? I asked myself. And the answer, coldly, came back at me. It's like losing your job or retiring from the one that, though it died on you on the way back, at least filled your days with something to do. But now you're 7 whole days, long empty days with the blank page in the clarté of the window as you wait for An Post in his tiny green van, bringing letters and parcels with someone else's name, saying, neither this time nor this place is right for you. Okay, this is a poem called Paul Léon, who was arrested August 1941, died April 1942. He was born into a Russian Jewish family, was a close friend of James Joyce, and acted as his unpaid secretary. Léon's middle name, Leopold, is a happy link with Joyce's hero Leopold Bloom. Léon was arrested by the Gestapo and murdered on the train tracks between Auschwitz and Birkenau. Jean Moulin, mentioned at the end of the poem, was a hero of the French resistance. The friend of the blind or nearly blind epic poet in prose, whose poem As Europe Rotted he helped translate into the perfect eloquence of the French language. His middle name, Leopold, so they are father and son and father. His mind innocent of guillotine garrotte or firing squad, The dear friend will be pushed into a cattle truck in the Gare du Nord, one among so many, so many, so many abandoned by God. Later, there's a strange, a timid hush over this episode. And the two translators who worked for Vichy, as though we didn't want to blame France, as though when someone said, shush, there were oh so few collaborators, but give praise to Jean Moulin, and it's a beautiful language. Yeah, and this is, why have I lost it? This is called Folly Bridge. There's a tall Gothic house beside Folly Bridge, very close to where Tom lives in Oxford, with a tower and statues set into the walls. It brought into mind poets like Milton, Shelley, Yeats, and Larkin, who used the tower as a visionary symbol of the poetic imagination. Okay, it's called Folly Bridge. Strange houses by the river, River Thames, where just now I'm walking about 8 p.m. this mild October evening. End of National Poetry Day, when words take off, and looking at the light in a window, a tiny uncurtained high-up window in the eccentric Gothic house by Folly Bridge, with those white busts and statues, ghostly figures, set into its darkling walls. Strange crenellated brick by Casserly walls. Looking at that tiny light, I think of Milton, one starlit night, staring at the plough and the bear from his high, lonely tower, a tower that passed from him to Shelley, then Yeats, who, though sometimes silly, made a gift of it to Philip Larkin, who looked up at the moon, stark in the night sky, and saw from his high window the keen, silvery, slivery glow of a single air-sharpened blade, which, when all is done and said, is Yeats's luminous lunar words, turned by another pen into a sword, the sword of art, of poetry, but bright and peaceful like the shiny moon or this window above a bridge called Folly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen Ray, reading Tom Paulin's poems. The thriller writer Jack Higgins said that writers are always working very hard, even when they're just looking out the window, which is a thing that I've often tried to follow, and that's not true. But I think that when you're reading a book, when I'm reading the books, any book, but particularly the books for the T.S. Eliot Shortlist, I will do that thing where I'll read maybe a page or even sometimes a stanza, and then I will look away. I'll look away from the book, I will look out of the window, I will let the words seep in, I'll then go back to the book, and you're looking out the window, you're reading, so that somehow the looking out the window becomes part of the act of reading, and all poetry readers will do that. And yet I found that with Karen Soley's book, Wellwater, I couldn't. I had to keep reading. It was a very odd thing that somehow the words wouldn't let me look away. You know, somehow I'll occasionally go for a walk, I'll go for a stroll with the book that I'm reading in my pocket, and it's as though the actual stroll is part of the act of reading, because the words that I've read are reverberating as I walk, and you kind of absorb it through a sort of osmosis or kind of literary seepage, but I can't. With this book, it demands that I read it, that I don't take my eyes off it, that I don't let the reading part of my mind close its door for a second in case it misses something. And each time I look back at the book, then there's more to read, and a particular couplet in it exemplified my experience of reading this wonderful book. To get to the other side quickly meant taking your life in your hands. And that's how it felt. To get to the other side of this book, whether quickly or slowly, meant taking your life in your hands. This book is about such urgent subjects that are surrounding us all at this moment, that to get to the other side as a reader does mean taking your life in your hands. But it is well worth taking your life in your hands with this book. Karen Soley.
Thank you, Ian, for that introduction, and thank you for being a marvelous host tonight. It's my privilege to be among these wonderful poets I so admire, and to be here tonight. I'm going to start with the title poem of the collection, called Well Water, which is set, as many of the poems in this collection are, where I grew up in rural southwest Saskatchewan in Canada. Well Water. I didn't know what I had. Drove the water truck underage to the well in a swimsuit, anointed with baby oil, to encourage a uniform exposure, a mild burn atop the tank as it filled in that burgeoning era of means to an end. It was a chore to attend the site of worship, from which song was drawn to feed the souls of planted trees not native to that place, as we were not native to that place. Our glyphosate on the wind, our malathion, dust of gravel roads that bore vehicles of gas well company agents, fracking derricks across the county, appearing before, as we said, we knew it. Blondie tore a strip off the wheat field. The tank cooled as the level rose, and I descended to start the engine so the radio wouldn't drain the battery, a mistake I'd made and lived to regret, which is the only way I ever learn anything. It took 75 minutes, the things you remember. My last act before closing the tap, to take the hose by the neck and drink, taste the cathedral's rock and temperature, the water hard and the table high. The water then, you could still drink it. I think probably a number of people in this room have lived at some point in a basement suite. It can be a unique experience. This is called Basement Suite. Left to our use are the fixtures and appliances repented of by the homeowners who don't realize this is a way to know them. In the basement, one is closer to God because closer to consequence, to creatures no one loves but the specialists. Bean weevil, rice weevil, rose weevil, pea weevil, flower, black vine, and strawberry weevils, a weevil to every purpose under heaven. The basement is a tree house in the roots. Think of it that way. And cold on 5 sides, like childhood, when water in the pipes was a talking animal, and it was advertised that soil neutralized the toxins applied to it, as our bodies did, and that the sea carried poison on its back into the hills. Our faces to the wall, to domestic passages beyond it, where heartbeats and adjustments are attenuated through the half space, lo-fi, all light is radio light. The house tries to forget we are here, yet there are bars on the windows in some places, like childhood. A slight clinging smell is associated. Every living situation has one. It's not the underworld, for Christ's sake, which is everywhere without depth. Still, the gaze does learn to creep along the baseboards and sharpen its knives on them. On the surface again, if we can bear it after so long sheltering in place, we may appreciate more than most a bit of natural warmth. Though money flows no more freely up here, look around you. I've always been interested in creatures that are so ubiquitous as to be invisible. And the pronghorn antelope is one such creature where I'm from. So this is antelope. They appear out of nowhere, as if they know where all the doors are, between our dimension and where they are called by their true name, where they are not the last survivors of their evolutionary niche. Understanding does not diminish their curiosity, and even the great plain aligned to the grid of monoculture is not monotony, which is painful to them, but a regularity that gives value to change. And what the fuck is that walking on the road? How annoying to be drawn into another pointless encounter with me. They huff, brandish their hardware, and run, entering a sublimity of motion that is like the sublimity of night. As a Gothic spirit loves accumulation, magic, a big block V8 in a Dodge Polara, they feel inside themselves an extra gear that will lift them from the earth, from the prairie's hall of mirrors, those fences whitetail leap that they must scrabble under, tearing their cloaks on the barbs. Only their old-timey machinery can digest the rough forbs. The jackrabbit finds peace in her evening hollow. Deer fold themselves in elegant anxiety upon their grass couches. But the pronghorn's eye has been widened in some backroom occult transaction, and he haunts the open country. A candle in the 5-mile corridor of his tenfold vision, sleeping minutes at a time under the shaking rings of Saturn. And the last poem I'll read is set, I suppose, in part in the West Edmonton Mall in Edmonton, Alberta. Catherine Esther, you know what I'm talking about. The book is dedicated to my dad, who passed away almost 2 years ago now. And some of the poems that were written before he died read much differently to me now that he's gone. And this is one of them. It's called Holiday at the Wave Pool. Warmish, oft bathed in. Pride of the second most visited and largest mall by gross leasable area on the northern subcontinent. Was it not in a childhood when travel meant Edmonton, astonishing, a wonder of the world? And on the other side of the intervening years during which acknowledgement was sought, sometimes deserved and occasionally won, when individuality hardened the heart and mysteries into problems, is it not a respite from the buses in March, from all the falling, and soothing to the shoulders and the knees? Stroll without your heavy coat along the ice-free corporate boulevards out of the wind, road salt, the violently arbitrary real, and get your steps in. You in the light of your living, you one-off among the wings repeating franchises. We of the just looking, thanks. Can we dance inside a little to the serviceable pop? Cry when it's sad in front of everybody? This humor called sorrow is inevitable as the food courts devoted to each stage of life and corresponding institution. A water feature beneath potted trees who've unfocused their eyes forever is a place to enjoy without buying, like nature. Pretty decent. It could be worse. With mom and newborn brother in hospital, we left our square of lawn tied to the clothes horse, shivering in back of the duplex, and went every night to McDonald's. My dad, little sister, and me. Him not knowing what else to do with us. And my God, it was glorious. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. I think you'll agree we've had 10 wonderful readings tonight. I don't envy the judges at all. The results will be announced tomorrow. Meanwhile, all the books are on sale, and the writers of the books will be signing them for you out there in the bar. Can we have a round of applause for our sign language interpreters tonight? And let's have some applause for our 10 wonderful poets. Thank you very much.